You are listening to KC Sports Network, the #1 podcast network for today's Kansas City sports fans. With former players from your favorite teams, informed perspectives, and former insiders, this is the place for you. KC Sports Network is proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of 21 Questions, brought to you by one of my favorite companies in Macadoodles, now open in Lee's Summit. If you are in the Kansas City area and you have not been to Macadoodles yet, you need to rectify that. And you don't have to bring your entire life savings to do it, because you're going to get the best prices there, the best customer service, and the best selection. Get to Macadoodles for all your liquor needs. I am not alone here on this week's 21 Questions. I get to do this with one of my favorite people on earth, my good pal, Tucker Franklin. Tucker, buddy, how we doing today?
I'm doing good, Craig. You're too kind. Lots of stuff coming with KC Sports Network content-wise, so make sure you stay tuned. By the time you're listening to this podcast, I'm sure you've already heard a lot of it. But no, I think that it's a great week. Jaguars week. Doug Peterson homecoming. Didn't overlap with Patrick Mahomes at all, but still interesting storyline with Doug Peterson coming home. Always been a big fan of Doug Peterson.
Yeah, me too. So do we think that they're inducting him into the Ring of Honor this week? You know,
I think
for
so.
He clearly they should.
Yeah.
No, I'm big Dougie P guy here. I predicted the Jaguars to win this division, and while they haven't won this division, they've been competitive all year long. So better team than everybody thought, but unfortunately, it's going to be a little different. 21 Questions. This is the Q&A show where we answer the questions from the KCSN Discord. You get access to the KCSN Discord as part of your subscriber package when you sign up for KCSN Daily at kcsn.substack.com. It is $30 a year, $5 a month. You get all sorts of perks, all sorts of film breakdown articles, and the Discord is pretty awesome, especially on game day. It's way better than the rigors of Twitter on game day, because it's a lot of fun. A lot of really good Chiefs fans in there breaking stuff down. So we'll get this started here with our good pal Grayson asks, in the small sample size we have and how they were using Kadarius Toney, whose snaps does he start eating into, Tucker?
I think we kind of already started to see it a little bit. I think it's probably Sky Moore. We didn't get to see Sky Moore a whole lot. I was encouraged from what I saw from Kadarius Toney early on in kind of what they did have him. I know people were going crazy about his route running. That clip that the NFL tweeted out about his hop step. He's going to be a guy that can get open in man-to-man situations, and the Chiefs have been seeing a lot of man-to-man situations. So that's a guy that is going to be he's going to be taking advantage of those situations. So I think it's probably going to be Sky Moore a little bit while you kind of let the rookie learn a little bit more. That's kind of who I see. I don't know about you, Craig.
Yeah, that's who I see as well. And it's not doom and gloom for Sky Moore.
Right.
I think that you're going to see Kadarius isn't going to play in exactly the same spots, but he might for this year. Like going forward, I think that they've got room to move all those guys around. You know, when you put McCole Hardman on the field and Kadarius Toney on the field, it doesn't make a lot of sense based on the way that the Chiefs want to run their offense to put a Sky Moore on the field as well. If McCole Hardman's not here next year, Sky Moore in that role makes a lot more sense. I loved the clip of Kadarius Toney absolutely leveling a defensive end on a chip. Yeah. I mean, that's and I'm sure that Andy is just sitting there rewatching that one on the tape over and over and over again. It's like, man, this guy's been here for a week and he's already bought in to bring in some heat in the blocking game. That's great. That's great to see. It's good to see him there. And yeah, I agree. It's Sky Moore there. So I'm looking forward to see if the role expands, if McCole Hardman cannot go this week, and at this point that we're recording this, it's a little bit unsure. He might be a game time decision. So if he can't go this week, I fully expect that we're going to see maybe more of that jet motion stuff, return motion stuff with Kadarius Toney utilized in some of those ways, still scheming him open, still trying to get him the ball behind the line of scrimmage and let him work. But he's going to get a few more opportunities to handle things. But we'll see. We'll see. All right, here. Matt K says, should we be worried about Trey Smith? He's not been great this year. Trey Smith, it does appear Trey Smith is a very boomer bust guy, and I think that he was last year as well, but I think the floor was a little bit higher, and I think teams have done a good job of putting guys opposite of Trey Smith. The opposition has done a good job of putting guys opposite of Trey Smith that play to his weaknesses. His lateral agility is not his best attribute, and it never has been. I mean, that was one of the things before that draft when we got, we heard people giving Trey Smith round one buzz. There was a lot of the draft analysts that were saying, I'm not sure that I get the round one stuff. Maybe round two, but not the round one because of the lateral agility, the ability to move side by side or side to side and mirror guys wasn't there as much as some of those other guys in the class. And you see that a little bit. You get a guy with some quickness in front of him. He's able to allow some penetration, but you also see the boom plays as well. Like Jeffrey Simmons ate his lunch on a few plays and he pancaked Jeffrey Simmons on a few plays. It's just kind of the thing that you're going to get with Trey Smith, Tucker, where you're going to see some absolute highlights and you're going to see some absolute lowlights. And that's just going to be part of his game.
It is, and it's hard to win 100% of the time, and especially against a guy like Jeffrey Simmons. Like that's why in that game when people talking about like Trey Smith getting beat is like, yeah, it's Jeffrey Simmons. Like the only other comparable, I mean, okay, Aaron Donald's obviously on a tier of his own, but his only other comparable like defensive lineman to Jeffrey Simmons is Chris Jones. And if Chris Jones was eating Trey Smith's lunch, we wouldn't be surprised, right? So there's something about just like who he's matched up against. Craig, I think you make a good point of defenses are now doing that. They're doing that with the Chiefs offensive line as a whole, getting really bad matchups for this whole offensive line. So I think it's been really interesting to see. I'm not necessarily worried. I mean, Jeffrey Simmons is a dog, so I'm not sweating him losing a few reps. He didn't look the greatest, right? And I think Trey Smith will be the first to admit that he didn't look the best in that game. So I'm not really too worried about him, and because he's going to get his as many times as he's going to get got.
Yeah, he's still one of the best four. How about that? I was getting ready to say one of the best five, but he's one of the best four. Like that right tackle situation. I think we got some questions coming up about that. But here, Z Andera asks, do you think the Chiefs' run game gets better with the return of Blake Bell, Tucker?
Ooh, that's interesting. And I think possibly when you add an inline guy that is like another blocker, it could help. But a lot of I don't know. I want to see them run interior a little bit more, and that maybe this is me live. This is my live thought process here as I think about the Chiefs' run game is I want them to be better on the ground because it makes them more balanced. Obviously, it helps with the pass protection. It helps with a whole lot of stuff. When the Chiefs can run the ball, defensive ends can't pin the ears back. They have to play the run true. They don't get to pin their ears back like they do when you throw the ball 68 times, right? So I want them to do it. I want them to run the ball. I think I want them to run to the interior a little bit more. But I mean, I do think Blake Bell does help in that circumstance where you can go a little heavier personnel and have another guy that you can trust in that run game as another run blocker, as another hat. You can kind of get the numbers, get the mismatch advantage. So right now they don't really have that. Like they're not gonna let Travis Kelce block at age 33. Like that's not what they have him for. He can do it. They don't want him to do that though. So I think that does help a little bit. I'm curious to see kind of what schemes. I mean, I'm sure. Listen. We've been talking about gap runs all the time. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's still going to be outside zone. It's still going to be outside inside zone. And I don't think the Chiefs particularly run that all that well. But it's going to be interesting to see. I do think Blake Bell does help, though. That was a long-winded answer of saying, yeah, I do think Blake Bell is going to help.
Yeah, I kind of identified on the lab. I don't know if that was earlier this week or last week that really realistically the only change to the run game that's going to occur, that's going to improve this season, is going to be by maybe the addition of Blake Bell and getting Jody Fortson healthy. Jody Fortson, did not play against the Raiders in week 5, did not play against Buffalo in week 6, did play against San Francisco, and then obviously was out last week as well. Full practices this week. They trust Jody Fortson as more of an inline blocker. They definitely trust Blake Bell as an inline blocker because he's a phenomenal one. So having those two guys both in the equation, now all of a sudden Travis Kelce's not playing so many snaps. You can go to 13 personnel with Kelce, and teams are going to still treat it like 12, but you can get a little more sand in the pants at the point of attack there. Noah Gray is a very willing blocker, and he tries really, really hard to move guys off the spot, but that's just not his game in the same way that it is for a guy like Blake Bell. So yeah, definitely could improve. Hopefully it does, because they need a little more balance on that side of the ball.
Yeah.
All right. FCal37 says, do you think the run game and play action game would be better if we ran a little more under center stuff? I feel like it could give us more variability in scheme and options for running back, and could help Mahomes not drift and be able to sell those play actions. Maybe we called for a little bit of that in the offseason. It was like, you got to see a little bit more in training camp. Being under center, running more play action does make things more difficult on linebackers. But that being said, Patrick Mahomes, that's not his game. That's not what he's best. That's not where he's at his most comfortable, is turning his back to the offensive line, turning his back to the route progressions. He wants to be able to see it happen, bam, bam, and he's got such a cannon that the ball basically teleports there. So while we criticize the RPO looks, and especially from shotgun, while we criticize all that stuff, it is one of the most effective ways to utilize his arm talent and utilize what they can do. So yes, I would like to see more under center, more play action. I think that makes you a more varied offense. I don't know, however, Tucker, I mean, the element of this, our defense is really going to cheat that hard to try and stop the Chiefs' run game when they haven't had success. I mean, even if you're doing under center, you got to have sustained success before the linebackers are like, all right, now I'm going to start shooting this gap. They might as well just stay at the second level and hope that Mahomes doesn't beat you.
Right. What was really interesting too, because we kind of talked a little bit about the rushing attack on outside the trenches, and Nick Lucky was talking about it. This is just from the strictly under center shotgun, point of view. The running back position doesn't change. Like, the running back position doesn't change from shotgun to where he is under center. Like, that they're the same. That's the same depth. And Nick even pointed out, he said, I think running backs like it a little bit better when there's not a quarterback in the way that they can look at the defense. So it's interesting to see with the play action. You obviously have to run the ball for the play action to work. They don't run the ball under center a whole lot. Patrick Mahomes obviously doesn't operate under center a whole lot with that. So I think that's interesting. So you gotta make it believable, right, with the play action. So if you're gonna go under center just to run play action, that's not going to be very believable.
I mean, I do want to point out here, because yes, it is true. I am with the analytics folks that you don't have to have a successful running game to have play action be successful. I totally agree with all of that. It also shifts and changes a lot more when Patrick Mahomes is your quarterback. Like, because teams are just naturally going to play it different. I agree with what they're saying. A lot of what they're saying, if a guy like, I'm trying to think of, I was going to say Kirk Cousins, but that's a bad example because that's a run-heavy offense. But, if a guy in like Kyler Murray starts leaning on play action a lot more, teams are gonna get, gonna try and play up a little bit more because they're not so threatened by the Cardinals' passing game. But you look at the Chiefs, you're like, man, we have to stop Patrick Mahomes. We have to stop the aerial attack first and foremost. So they're just going to play it a little bit differently for that specific quarterback. So, okay, we've got Zach here. What does a legitimate contract offer to Juju look like that he may accept from Veach? Tucker, I'm gonna let you kind of start with this one right here, with the caveat here. Juju was asked about this in the pressers this week. This is before Zach posted this question to the Discord, so he's obviously from the future. But Juju was asked about this, and he indicated he really wants to stay in Kansas City, that this is a good opportunity for him, and that he really wants to stay there. That's good to hear. I know a lot of Chiefs fans are excited about Juju going forward here. So, Tucker, I'll just kind of let you look at this. What's a reasonable offer, do you think?
Yeah, it's really interesting, and this is one of the things that I bring up a lot, just because the players don't determine the market, right? And that's kind of a hard thing of, like, Juju Smith-Schuster deserves to be a higher paid wide receiver. I think he's played very well this year. I
Mhm.
wouldn't be upset if the Chiefs do shell out some money to keep him around for, say, maybe 4 or 5 years. Honestly, I would not be upset about that at all. What the market is gonna say to that is might be different than like what people are willing to pay, right? Just because
Mhm.
of how the market has changed so much. I was trying to look at his spot track to kind of see. If he had an evaluation, because I know Spot Track does the
They
evaluations
they don't.
sometimes.
They don't have one for him. Yeah.
They don't, right? And
Yeah.
that's what I was gonna say. So I mean, it's looking like he got 1 year, 8 million this year, if I'm
Mhm.
reading this correctly.
Yeah.
I think if I mean he's probably going to get a pay raise from there, from the 8 million APY. So you have to be thinking about probably it's looking like 10, 12 APY for a couple of years. So you're looking at a contract that's it's kind of up there, I think, in terms of the money. But I think probably 10 to 12 APY is what I would feel comfortable with. Who knows what the wide receiver market's going to be this offseason, which is what we've seen with like the cap boom and everything like that. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking around there somewhere. Maybe I'm
Well,
lowballing
here's
it.
here's the thing for that. Juju Smith-Schuster next year is going to be 26 years old. And I think we all forget how young he is. Like
He
you think
is.
about how long Juju's been contributing at the NFL level. You think about, oh, he must be approaching 30. He's still 26. Last year, Nelson Aguilar and Sterling Shepard at age 29 got 10 and 11 million dollars APY. So, Juju is a way better receiver than that and is
Yeah.
having a way better receiving season than that. So that it could be a pricey contract, and his agent would be absolutely warranted in expecting that. I know everybody's going to look at that and say, "Well, maybe he can take a little less to play for the Chiefs," and maybe he will. I don't know what his what his priorities are, but as it stands right now, his agent's not going to completely torpedo the market just to keep Juju somewhere here. The other element of this, the wide receiver group in free agency next year is bad. It is
Right.
really bad. And I think it's very safe for me to say this. Juju is the best wide receiver that is on the market next year. And McCole Hardman might be number two. That's how bad the wide receiver market is. It is guys like Sterling Shepard, Nelson Aguilar, DJ Chark, Randall Cobb, Marvin Jones, Byron Pringle again, Alan Lazard, like Julio and AJ Green are both available, but again, aging players. So you want a guy that you can spend some money on. That market is going to be a lot hotter for Juju than we expect, which is why the contract needs to get done right now. And it's also why his agent shouldn't do a contract right now. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can they
Jacob
do
M.
that?
Yep.
Before we move on,
Yeah.
can they do that? They're in the window where they can do a contract right now, correct? I know there's a little bit
Yes.
of a time where they can't
Yeah.
at the beginning of the season, I believe, but yeah, no, that's very interesting. He's probably looking at, 10 to 12 was a low ball on my part. Probably looking at like almost close to like 20. You're probably looking 16 to
You,
20.
you
It's a wide
listen.
range, but
You're probably looking at the Christian Kirk contract,
yeah.
and buddy, that's a lot of money. But here's the next question that kind of goes along with that, and we'll make this one quicker. Jacob M. What are the chances Kansas City cuts Marquez Valdez-Scantling this season? They have an out after this season, according to Spot Check. Yes, they do. By I believe, the third day of the league year next year, if they cut Marquez Valdez-Scantling, he's basically free and clear. There's not a large sum of dead money. If they make it past that, he has to stick around, basically. So
Yeah.
that's basically, they gave themselves an out in case of an injury or anything like that. Tucker, I don't know your thoughts, but I personally, I think they might look at an out here and say, hey, we got Kadarius, we got Sky Moore, we got, especially if they are able to sign Juju, like you can
Right.
say, hey, those are our guys that we want to move forward with, and then maybe add a guy in the draft as well and try and get younger, more explosive at that position.
It's certainly something to think about. I know his usage went down in the last game, and people were kind of worried about that or freaking out about it. I don't necessarily. It's a matchup league, so like
Yeah.
this team didn't match up very well with what Marquez can do.
Yeah.
Now, this Jaguars upcoming game, zone team, maybe he can make them pay a little bit more. So we'll see what he can do against here. It's going to be really interesting because the composition of this wide receiver room, they've got MVS under contract. They've got Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore, but like that's it. Like that's the only wide receivers that they have under market. So I I don't a part of me wants to say that they do keep with him just because of they don't have very many people in that wide receiver room. But if they do want to
Yeah.
get younger, it does make sense to let him go. Like there's one of those things where I think this is a wait and see situation with
Mhm.
MVS to see if he's not playing well. Obviously, you're going to get out of that contract, but I don't think it's going to hurt to have that body in that room.
I think Kadarius Toney makes a measurable difference on this wide receiver
For
room
sure.
going forward. And Brett Veach has tried to, and Andy Reid have tried to kind of portray that in the media. It's like, hey, listen, this isn't just we're not trying to get better over the next 8 games. We're trying to get better over the next 3.5 years. And I think you
Yeah.
give yourself that out. So yeah, we will wait and see. But what we're not going to wait and see is this ad from Liquid Death.
Hey, sorry to interrupt, but I have to tell you about some of these strange tall boys of beer that you might see in the bottled water section of your favorite store. Well, it's not actually beer. It's a liquid mountain spring water company from the Alps, and it's called Liquid Death. And you might be wondering, Tucker, why is it called Liquid Death? Well, let me tell you, it's because they'll brutally murder your thirst. That's right. Not only are they going to brutally murder your thirst, they are going to brutally murder plastic pollution in the process. It's wonderful with their infinitely recyclable aluminum cans. They also donate 10% of their proceeds from every can sold to help kill plastic pollution. It's great. They've got 4 flavors. They have regular sparkling water. They've got still water, which is the mountain spring water, and they have mango. They have berry flavored, and they also have the one I like here, the severed lime. I'm going to go ahead and crack it on open. And you can get a Liquid Death at your local Target, Walmart, 7-Eleven, or find a Liquid Death retailer near you with their store locator tool at liquiddeath.com/KCSN. That's liquiddeath.com/KCSN.
Great ad read, Tucker. Great ad read, buddy. I really,
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. Yeah. Awesome job, bud. You got that hoodie off really fast.
Yeah.
Well done. All right, Robbie asks, I am turning 40 next year and decided that for my birthday, I wanted to go to training camp for the first time in my life. However, that was before I knew Casey was hosting the draft next year. Not sure I'll have another chance to go to training camp. I live 1,500 miles away. I'm not sure Casey will ever get to host the draft again. If I have to pick one, what do I choose? That is difficult. I feel like the draft is going to be a bigger event, and the draft is going to actually be in Kansas City. So if you are coming to Kansas City, if you don't get to get back to the Kansas City area very often, you're going to be able to see and do more during that draft time period because you're going to be closer to Kansas City. Whereas if you're coming to training camp, you're going to be going to St. Joe, which has some fun spots in its own right. Don't get me wrong, but you're also going to be about an hour away from Kansas City, and going back and forth takes a little bit of time. You got to be up early and all that. But training camp's really fun. Tucker, I don't know if you have an opinion one way or the other. I'm saying draft though.
I think it's draft. I think it's you don't know if if Kansas City's going to host the draft again. Um,
Mhm.
with the way that the NFL is doing it, they're probably doing it. I was trying to look up really quick, kind of the layout because they have come out with what it's going to be. It's at Union Station, so it's going to be down there. I think they've got the draft experience up on the top by the World War One monument.
Mhm.
They're going to have all of the games and stuff that you like to play up there. But then down on the hill, down below on the hill below of Union Station, they're going to have the draft and they're going to have the red carpet and everything like that. So I think it's going to be a super cool event. An outside draft is, I think they did it in Cleveland
Mhm.
a couple years ago. That was after the pandemic, I believe. They did it in Cleveland. It was an outdoor draft. It's going to be outdoor again. Trying to do it outdoors in April is very interesting on the NFL part.
No, it's gonna be
Um,
awesome.
yeah, no, it's going to be great. So I think I do love training camp because I think that, and it makes sense why people love training camp, and because that's the most access you're going to have to that team ever.
Mhm.
And that the way you can get up close to them, you can watch them practice, you can see the personnel, how they operate, how these guys work. I think is something that I really do enjoy about training camp. And then when you start to like, it's like it's just practice, yeah, but it's just like the access you get to these guys, you're not going to get this close to them throughout the regular season. So that's what's really nice about training camp. But I agree with you, Craig. Got to stay in the city. I think you got to go to the draft. That's going to be a once in a I don't want to say lifetime because I'm sure the draft will come back to Kansas City, but
Yeah.
who knows what the situation will be then. But it's
Once
probably
once in a generation. Once in a generation opportunity there. Yes.
right,
Yeah.
right.
So, yeah. Okay. Grayson asks, what does a Colin Saunders contract look like? Colin Saunders has played his way into some good money this season. And I think that when you're looking at defensive tackles, like there's a lot of those top guys that make in the 13, 14, 15 million dollar range. Obviously, not talking about, Aaron Donald here, but the Fletcher Coxes, Javon Hargrave, even David Onyemata made $9 million, APY. So those are good numbers for that. I think that Colin is just a step down from that. So I think that he's going to be kind of in like that $5.5, $6 million APY next year. I mean, Derek Nani got $3 million on the open market from the Chiefs last year. He kind of sniffed around, wasn't there, came back for it was 2.75. But Colin Saunders, I think, makes a little bit more than him because he's got some pass rush juice. He's not just a run stuffer, and he's got some penetrative ability. So I think he's going to have a little more interest. But I'm hoping the Chiefs retain him because if he's playing like this, under Joe Cullen, he's been a big, big impressive piece.
Yeah, there are some interesting defensive tackles that are out there right now, or that will be free agents.
Correct.
So I don't know if that really dictates his market a whole lot. If you look at like kind of Spot Tracks rankings is what I'm looking at. I think they just sort it by 2022 AAV. He's down there a ways, and I do think that his AAV does go up, but I don't know if it goes up a whole lot, as you mentioned, Craig. So I do think that his contract now. I need to see how old he is. I just lost him here. 26.2 is how old they say he is. So he's still pretty young. And when in the grand scheme of things, so I do hope the Chiefs bring him back. He has been playing very well. It's that 2019 draft. That might be one of the best hits that he's gotten from that draft.
Good. Yeah, absolutely, man. All right. Lee87 says, question, would you trade 10 years of the Chiefs in the playoffs but never winning a Super Bowl or one Super Bowl win with 9 other seasons of no playoffs? It's the Super Bowl win easily. Like failing in the playoffs 10 years in a row, like that doesn't do me anything anymore. Like at this point, it's all about championships. I would much rather see a Super Bowl win and then just kind of dwell in the basement and have fun in the draft every single year rather than making it to the playoffs and realistically never sniffing a Super Bowl. Like Super Bowls are hard to win, really hard to win. I know that's the aspiration for this team every year because you got Patrick Mahomes, and luckily you don't ever have to go into the situation like Lee's describing here, but you do. I would much rather just have the one Super Bowl win and then, fade off in obscurity for another 9 years.
It's the hope that kills you.
Yeah.
That's all I'm going to add. It's the hope that kills you.
All right. Mike Denny asks, what is your favorite sauce to have with pasta? Tucker, you got a favorite one?
Yeah, I really like a good tomato cream sauce. It's basically just a good marinara mixed with a good Alfredo. But when you get two of those very good things mixed together, can't beat it. Tara makes a very good tomato cream sauce. We have it a lot on our pasta. That's my favorite. I do love a good Alfredo, but when you put them together, oof.
I like a seafood bouillabaisse type sauce with over some pasta or something like that. Just something really good like that. I think we can all agree what's not a good sauce to have with pasta is chili. Get your stuff together, Cincy. Get it together. All right, Keith McClain asks, will Trent McDuffie get a pick on the 1 yard line like his rookie cornerback counterparts have done this season? And will it come against the Jags? I mean, there's a chance. Trevor Lawrence does not see the field particularly well, and he's made some really crucial mistakes. And if he's going to target Trent McDuffie, which teams should not, based on, again, very small sample size, but holy cow, he's been glued to players. Like, at this point, if he's getting a pick, it's going to come because they're going to try and test him and challenge him in the end zone with a bigger receiver. And yeah, you underthrow that ball, Trent McDuffie's probably coming down with it.
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence, you mentioned his reading the field hasn't been great. It hasn't specifically been great within the 20-yard line. So in the red zone, his decision making in the red zone has been bad. And I thought this was really interesting, Craig. Brett Coleman equated it to like this is the season before Josh Allen took off. He kind of has those same vibes of just like, okay, this is kind of what the Josh Allen experience was like just before he became Josh Allen. They traded for Stephon Diggs. I think Stephon Diggs made Josh Allen. I'm not saying this Stephon Diggs built Josh Allen, but I think that certainly helped him. It certainly helped him. The Jaguars just traded for Calvin Ridley. Does that help Trevor Lawrence become Trevor Lawrence? We will find out and we will see. I think that those are some interesting comparisons to make there. But I do think that in the red zone specifically, Trevor Lawrence does have a tendency to make some mistakes. So it very well could happen.
I do think it's going to be interesting that they have all those wide receivers that they paid. They got Calvin Ridley, and then they're going to turn around and offer McCole Hardman $20 million a year to be a field stretcher for him. Like they're gonna have a lot invested in that wide receiver room, so that offense better get going.
Yeah.
Hit him with the hezzy. What's your take on the running backs? It seems like they don't let Pacheco or Clyde get enough touches to get into a groove. Tucker, I'll let you take the first on this one here.
I don't think the Chiefs have bad running backs. I don't. This is hard for me because you guys heard my thought process earlier on the Chiefs run game. I don't think the running backs themselves are terrible. I don't also think the offensive line is terrible at run blocking. So it's a very interesting combination of what is the part that is making the run game not work, right? So maybe it has. I think it's probably a scheme thing. I say this again, knowing that the Chiefs aren't going to change their scheme and stuff like that. We saw, I think they ran gap scheme for like a game and it worked very well.
Awesome.
It was one of those things where you're just like, what? Why don't you just do that again? But I do think that there are some vision problems with Clyde, with Pacheco. I personally really like Jerick McKinnon. I have always liked Jerick McKinnon, just the way he's ran. Maybe they do need to give a little bit more touches and just get the ball shared around. But it's really hard to. You talk about this in basketball a lot with rhythm, right? So you don't want to take a player out of the game when he's out of rhythm. You want a player to get rhythm. So you don't want to, give a running back a bunch of carries and then take him out of rhythm. You don't want to, it's one of those things you got to feel out for game by game, I think. So I don't put a whole lot of stock into like the touches for the running backs in that circumstance because it's again a matchup league. Maybe one running back does a little bit things better than the other running back against a certain team. I trust them in that regard, but I think it's one of those things with like rhythm, with confidence and stuff like that. So I don't think that you should be worried when you look at the touches.
And I know that the general sentiment is, running backs get stronger as the game goes along because the offensive line can lean on guys and stuff like that. And he's got to change the scheme for that to happen. If you're running, RPOs with inside zone or outside zone as part of the RPO read and the offensive lineman can't fire off downfield, like you're not leaning on guys as heavily. And so if that's the case, like now all of a sudden you're not giving the lanes to the running backs. They're taking more hits behind the line of scrimmage. It kills kind of the motivation. It kills the engine a little bit. And so I get how Andy Reid looks at that and goes, yeah, no, never mind. We're scrapping this, especially since they played a lot of ridiculously good run defenses this year, like really, really good run defenses. And so you just look at it, it's like against the Titans. Yeah, Titans have a bad pass defense, good run defense. You kind of see why Patrick Mahomes threw the ball 63 times. It was obviously the right move there to move the change. So we're going to be back right after this with a question about a player that the Chiefs traded for, but this ad's from our friends at Trade Coffee.
Hey, sorry to interrupt again, but I've got to tell you about our sponsor, Trade Coffee. And going to a coffee shop is a great experience, but it's not something most of us can do every day. If you're looking for that delicious local coffee shop taste on a daily basis, it's so much easier to get that with Trade Coffee. Trade Coffee is a coffee subscription service that makes it so easy for you to discover new coffees and make your best cup of coffee at home every day No fancy equipment needed. It's wonderful. Whether you know what you're doing and you already know what kind of coffee you like, or you're looking and you need some help, Trade makes it easy and convenient to discover new coffees. They'll send you ground coffee or whole beans or however you make it your coffee at home. They will send it to you. It's absolutely perfect. It's a win-win in my book there. Here's how you got to do it. You're going to upgrade your coffee today with Trade Coffee and let them take the guesswork of finding your perfect cup. Right now, Trade is offering listeners a total of $30 off their subscription, plus free shipping at drinktrade.com/KCSN. That's drinktrade.com/KCSN for $30 off your subscription to the best coffees in the country. drinktrade.com/KCSN.
We do love our coffee here at KCSN. We love our liquid death. We love drinks. This podcast is sponsored by drinking. So
Right.
it's alcoholic, non-alcoholic, you name it, sponsored by
Drink. Good point. It's a good point.
All right. Daltino asks, what are your overly optimistic? So keep that in mind. Overly optimistic predictions for Kadarius Toney's production for the rest of the season, Tucker.
So when it comes to new acquisitions, I always just lower the bar as low as it can go, right? That's what I do personally for myself. Overly optimistic for me would probably be like, I don't know, a couple tuds and let's say like 400 yards, right? So like, I mean, there's how many games left? There's like 7 games left. So
8
yeah,
games left.
8 games left. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's about right. A couple tuds and 7. Wait, I didn't say 700.
You said 400
yards. Yeah, I said 400 yards because I was thinking about McCole Hardman's season last year. I believe he had like 700 yards. That's what I was thinking of. So that's kind of what me personally, I try to be pessimistic so I don't disappoint myself. And that I want to preface that by saying that. That's probably what my overly optimistic expectations are for Kadarius Toney.
And for reference, that would best his entire season last year with the Giants. And I mean, yeah, you could definitely, you could look at what he did. He had 420 yards last year with the Giants, no touchdowns, but you could look at that and say, hey, yeah, the Chiefs are going to use him a little bit better, use him a little bit more. So I don't disagree with that. Don't disagree with that at all. All right, here we're going to go to Casey from KC says, we were just talking about drinks. What drinks characterize the offense and the defense in the first half? Oh, man. The defense was like, like dirty well water. Spagnuolo did a good job of turning it into some fine whiskey, but yeah, no, it was dirty well water in the first half there. Just really disgusting to watch. Yesterday, if you guys haven't watched it, go take a look at the defense breakdown that we did. Talk about the run game a little bit. We had Nick Leckie on to talk about it from the offensive line perspective and the way the Titans were able to kind of manhandle the Chiefs in the first half, and then the changes that were made and how that affected that. It's a really good watch from the offensive perspective while bringing in some of the defensive elements. So go watch that. Tucker, do you have anything on the offense for drinks?
Well, for the defense, I was thinking it's like a poorly made old fashioned when it's like a whiskey that's not very good, or it's just like very high alcohol proof, and you're just like, whoa. But then once it gets towards the end, you get like the ice melt off, and you're like, okay, this is kind of palatable. That's kind of what I see the defense started off just like, whoa, but then it gets a little bit more palatable towards the end. I think for the offense, man, the offense has just been so hit or miss. I think when you talk about it, so it's a drink that like it's good sometimes. Okay, it's a Long Island. Sometimes Long Islands can hit. Sometimes when you get a bad Long Island, they are not hitting. So I think that's kind of what I think. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a Bloody Mary for me. Start in, I'm like, man, I love this. Halfway through it, man, I don't love this anymore. Like that's kind of what the Chiefs offense sometimes for that is. All right. We're going to go down to Zax and Minerax here. How do the Chiefs go about making this AFC South matchup a nervous sweat down to the very end? Because they have so far with every other game. Tucker, how do you see this game going? We kind of handled this on the game preview, so I'll just let you give your 2 cents on this one.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a game that I said this on Outside the Trenches. I think the Chiefs do control it, but it's it's a game where they control that's a little too close for comfort. I believe my final score prediction was 24-14. They cover the 9.5, but it's one of those things where the Chiefs get off to like a 24-point lead, but then don't score the rest of the time. And
Yeah.
it's one of those things like that where they're like, okay, yeah, the offense is working good, and then they do try to like run the ball with outside zone, and it just doesn't work. Kind of situation is how I see that this game kind of gets sweated out like that. But it's really never going to be in doubt because I think the Chiefs are going to control the game, but it's going to be one of those things where like on the scoreboard you could see they could come back, like they
Right.
could, but you're not going to be really you're going to be a little worried about it, but you're not going to ever be freaked out about it just because the Chiefs have controlled on the defensive side of the ball. They're making Trevor Lawrence make mistakes. They're making Travis Etienne not run all over them because that dude's a stud. I don't know if we've talked about
Yeah.
him a whole lot
Oh,
enough,
man.
but like he's been playing incredibly well. But I think that's going to be one of those games where it's like Chiefs come out. The Buccaneers game, I think, is what I equated it to in 2021, where they come out, they set records in the first two quarters, and they like didn't score the rest of the time. So it could be something like that I see them really sweating out.
So basically, what you're telling me is an Andy Reid shutdown mode. Shout out to
Yep.
AHPKC for that. Yeah, basically, where you're just like, Andy, please put your foot on the gas. Please kill this off for us. Okay, gotcha.
Yes. I see
Understood.
that.
Positive Toasty asked something that we answered earlier, but want to shout him out here with McColl nursing an injury. Who gets more snaps this week, KT or Sky? We think it's Kadarius. We clearly think it's Kadarius there. Dustin asks, with everything that has happened so far, where do you see the other AFC West teams finishing at the end of the season? Do any of them make the playoffs? Yeah, I think you're still going to see the Chargers compete and be in the playoffs. Currently, they're a wild card team as part of this. They are 5-3. Yeah, they're dealing with a whole bunch of injuries, but I don't know if anybody's looked at the Chargers schedule. It's pretty easy from here on out. They're playing a third place schedule, and boy, it looks like a third place schedule. So I think that they're still going to make the playoffs. I think they're going to push the Chiefs to the end just because that schedule's a little bit easier. I think the Chiefs are still going to win the division, maybe by multiple games, but I think it's going to get dicey towards the end of the season. You're going to have to see the Chiefs basically perform week 16, 17, 18. They can't just kind of sit back on their laurels a little bit and win the division. Certainly they don't want to because they're the number one seed. Tucker, do you see any other teams? Do you see the Broncos or the Raiders sneaking in?
No, I don't think so. The Broncos are a mess, but the Raiders have become a mess in this past week. I mean, they've had to put Darren Waller on the IR, Hunter Renfrow going on the IR as well. Both guys with soft tissue injuries, so you kind of forced to put them on the IR just to make them rest those soft tissue injuries. And then you got their linebacker, who I can't remember his name off the top of my head, who had 63 snaps in the previous game, played 91% of their game, just straight up retire. He said, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah. I'm tired of playing for Josh McDaniels. I'm done.
He said, I'm tired of it. It gives me the vibes of, oh my goodness, what was his name who retired at halftime when he played for the Bills?
Oh, yeah. Oh my goodness. Why am I? Levi Wallace is the only name that I can think of, and that's not right.
He was a linebacker as well, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So he was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. And it gives me the same vibes. Somebody in the comment section is going to tell us who it is. And I appreciate them for doing it. But Vontae David, that's who it was. Shout out Jordan on the other end of the screen. That's who it was. Absolute stud when it comes to it. But yeah, no, I don't think that the Raiders or the Broncos, man, it's going to be close for the Chargers, but I think you're right. I do think that they push the Chiefs all the way to the end. Chiefs have a game lead on them right now, I think.
They do.
In the division, and it's going to be hard for them to see that game on, what is this, next week, the 20th, right?
Sunday Night Football
got flexed. Rest in peace to us for having to do a post game show after a Sunday night game again. But anyway, I think that that game's going to be really big. The Chiefs already do have the game tiebreaker on them, but having both games on them would be absolutely huge.
Absolutely, it would be huge. And the other thing that you forgot to mention for the Raiders, they cut Jonathan Abram this week.
Oh, that's right.
Also cut another first-round pick, yet another first-round pick that they're just like, nah, we are done with you. Just an absolute train wreck over there, and the Chiefs still have them Still have 2 games against the Broncos, who do still have a good defense. Like I don't want to go too far with that, but those are looking like much more winnable games. So yeah, that Chargers game looms huge, not just for the division standpoint, but also for playoffs standpoints for the Chargers. There, they can't afford to drop too many games because the rest of the AFC pretty competitive this year. All right, we're gonna close it out here with David Borland. Most people agree humor is a big part of anyone's attractiveness. Do you think Andy Reid's State Farm commercial pushed him into the top 5 of best looking NFL coaches? I mean, listen, Andy Reid's a beautiful man. I don't think that he needed the humor to really push him into the top 5 of that. But I certainly love the fact that when Andy was asked about it, that his comment was, I'm surprised I wasn't number 1. Like, it's perfect. Right. It's absolutely perfect. It just kind of shows, like, we heard from Alex Okafor a couple of weeks ago. It's like, man, people don't know how funny he is, how truly great his personality is. Everybody just kind of sees him as this kind of lovable big guy that's kind of, over there, offensive mind and all of that. And he's just a, guy that players like, but it's so much more than that. I think that some of that comes through and some of that. So I really enjoyed that. And I thought it was funny that somebody decided that they needed to rank the NFL head coaches by attractiveness. Like that is a wild one to me.
What's really funny too is you got some handsome men who are NFL head coaches. Sean McVay, I mean, Kyle Shanahan.
They're all from the Shanahan tree. They are all from
it is. They got some handsome guys. I named 3 of them, and I'm sure I haven't seen the list, and I'm sure Andy Reid's number 4. Right there. I know Andy Reid's number 4. But no, I think that State Farm commercial, when I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, Andy Reid's being funny. It's like, what? Because as Chiefs fans, we think that he's just like so serious all the time. Mm-hmm. But he's not. When you ask former players, he's not serious like all the time. He likes to have a good time. So seeing that commercial and the way he throws the pin, I think is very funny. There's just so much about that commercial that is very funny. And I haven't gotten tired of it yet, which is saying something because that debuted like I think week 1, and we're 10 weeks into the season, and I haven't gotten tired of it yet.
And it is in heavy rotation, just like all of those State Farm commercials are. It brings me joy. I imagine we're going to see more of him doing that sort of stuff, and you will see more of us on the post-game show. You will see more of us in the upcoming lab episodes outside the trenches. We have so much content for you guys, so make sure you like, share, subscribe, click those buttons right underneath our faces right here to try and do that on YouTube. If you are on Apple, Spotify, wherever, drop a 5-star review, subscribe to the podcast there so you can make sure that you stay up to date with everything. Tucker, my friend, thank you for joining me. Everybody, be kind to each other, and we'll catch you later.